bases dropped on Thursday Thoughts here on Soccer's Morning Show. Soccer down here. John here, you there. The rundown for today. We know, I guess we'll work backwards. Niko Moreno comes on at 10:30, 10:35 or so for the last half hour of the show. We'll get Niko's perspectives on, now that we're down to the Final Four in Major League Soccer, we'll get his thoughts on everything. We'll get his thoughts on Best 11. And I know that there's one position that ever since Best 11 came out, I think that it's been universal on this show with a lot of folks that a particular name has been mentioned. And I know that Niko probably will hit that name without even being primed or proffered. So, or prodded to. So, Niko at 10:30. We're going to spend a lot of time on Matt Miazga. There was a great piece that Laurel Fowler came out with at Queen City Press. Give Laurel a follow. And I don't think that she's going to be invited to any holiday parties at FC Cincinnati anytime soon. It is a blow-by-blow of the report, and it's some wild stuff. This is what happens when we don't have an evening show. So we're going to go all over Matt Miazga a lot today and go over all the different aspects of it and potential fallout, because there's some stuff that that was in the report that is more and more tentacles of what was going on. Morning, Abby. Oh, Bluetooth speaker, nice. So Abby is new Cyber Monday purchase of a Bluetooth speaker. So, Mazel Tov. I hope it works, and I hope that I don't do anything to blow your ears out when it comes to everything. So, Niko Moreno, a lot of time on Matt Miazga, because there's some things here that we've got to parse through, and so that we're going to spend a lot of time on Matt Miazga this morning because of the effects and after effects and all of the knock on. So we'll get into that this morning. And opening kickoff, yes, definitely does make it easier to listen when you're kind of wandering around the house instead of carrying a phone and dropping a phone on or a computer on a countertop. Definitely does. Opening kickoff this morning, we're going to talk about a guy that's got like 4 articles written about him on the front page of the Telegraph. Opening kickoff brought to us by our friends at Kickoff Coffee and kickoffcoffeeco.com. Good morning, belated birthday boy. Ricky is now turned 22. And so Ricky's hanging out with us from the beginning today. So good morning, Ricky. Hope you got what you were asking for your birthday more than anything else. Because, that's what birthdays are for. Birthdays are for getting stuff that you don't have that folks can get for you. And hopefully everything on your birthday list was properly acquired and you can build forward with it. But opening kickoff brought to us by our friends at Kickoff Coffee and kickoffcoffeeco.com. That is the QR code for those of you who are watching across on the SDH socials, whether you're on the YouTube channel, either on Twitch or the 280-character app. With the QR code and our friends at Kickoff Coffee, don't forget to use the code SoccerDownHere15. They in turn take 15% off your purchase. If you use SoccerDownHere15, they in turn take 10%, reinvest it into youth games, youth initiatives. Very, very cool stuff from our friends at Kickoff Coffee and kickoffcoffeeco.com. Thanks again, Ricky, for the subscription. When I look, and this is, and I'll say this is also as a part of Kickoff Coffee and opening kickoff. When we look at what you guys do on a daily basis, that we are in season 7 of SDH on the morning show. And it really is humbling on a bunch of different levels that you guys hang with us, that you've been hanging with us, that you subscribe the way that you do, that you follow us in every direction, that we get to see you out in the community, that you're with us as a part of our growth. And it's very humbling at times to see what you guys have been able to help build in the Discord and things like that on a daily basis. But we can't thank you enough for being a part of everything that we've been building here at SDH and are continuing to build. 2024, looking forward to 2024 and seeing the next stages and the next steps. We're going to have a big high school schedule. Jason has already been He's been plowing through the high school schedule, and so we're going to have a big high school schedule this year, and there could be some other things as well, but definitely going to hit the high schools hard with soccer's in session and everything there after the first of the year, and then before you know it, it's big training camp, and we'll be back at it again for the 24th season. So I can't thank you guys enough. All right, so opening kickoff. Andre Onana, and I know that for those of you that listen to Prem and Proper, you get to hear the dulcet tones of Drew Dickinson and the 3D and the Drew Dickinson diatribe. You get to hear Maddie Cruz and her thoughts from a Newcastleian point of view, and I know that Alex Basine is more than happy to welcome folks under the tent as much as possible. So yesterday in Champions League, I'll work backward. It was A, B, C, and D yesterday. Arsenal put a thumping on Lens. It was 5-0 at the half. I believe they finished up at 6. Bayern Munich and FC Copenhagen drew goalless draw to plus 649. Nice point for Copenhagen. Benfica and Inter, they got into the liquor cabinet that had been locked by your parents. 3-3 draw to plus 244. Braga and Union Berlin, draw 1-1 at a plus 277. Real Madrid beat Napoli 4-2. That one was also on the good stuff at a minus 132. Just to go back and look at the numbers here. So Real Madrid and Napoli was 6 goals on the board. If you had your over at 5.5 in the composite from all of our Christmas plate appetizers, it was a plus 860. 5 3/4, 5.75 was a plus 1250. I don't know where you can get a 3/4 of a goal or a quarter of a goal, but traditionally it's even numbers and halves. But if you had the over-under at 5.5 and you took the over, it was a plus 860. Invested 100, left with 860 Christmas appetizers and side dishes. So Real Madrid and Napoli was nuts yesterday. 4-2 win for Real Madrid. And yes, we are building to our discussion about Manchester United. So you end up with those results on the board. And this is what happens when you're trying to reload something and it decides not to reload. You end up having to filibuster waiting for something to happen. Real Sociedad and Salzburg drew a goalless draw to plus 325. Then you also ended up with, as it scrolls to the bottom of the page and just kind of goes all over the place. PSV winners on the road at a plus 147. They were a slight road favorite at Sevilla. So Real Sociedad and Salzburg at a plus 325. Battleship Galatasaray and Manchester United. 3-3 draw, absolute craziness. Manchester United had the 2-1 lead at the break. They couldn't hold it. Plus 266. Once again, you go with the total. And if you had 5.5 for this one, that was a plus 1,000. So if you took the over at 5.5 for that match, it was a plus 1,000. But yesterday and this morning, one of the greater talking points has been how Andre Onana continues to drive folks crazy. And I'm sitting here staring at the front page of the Telegraph. I haven't even gotten to the Guardian. I haven't even gotten to Sky. Headline, it's time for Ten Hag to drop Onana. That's from James Ducker. Side piece from Ducker. Ten Hag's Manchester United are utterly chaotic. They cannot return to top like this. Article. Terrible Andre Onana mistakes make Man United teammates nervous, says Paul Scholes. Headline. Onana howlers so bad only one teammate went to console him. That's what you were getting yesterday with this match. So let's just kind of cruise through what we're seeing here. And it was reserve keeper Altay Bayindir who was the only player to go, GK Union. Next time Jessica Charman comes on, we'll discuss GK Union in a situation like this. Altay Bayindir was the only player to go and console him after the craziness. Jason Burt. Quote, in hell, Andre Onana was the greatest sinner. The hapless goalkeeper was the miscreant who has left Manchester United on the brink of Champions League elimination. 2-0 ahead, 3-1 up, and yet United could only draw with Galatasaray. Each time, Onana was at fault. Each time, his role in this United team and the £47.2 million manager Erik ten Hag persuaded the club to spend to bring him from Inter Milan was under more and more scrutiny. United should have won, make no mistake. Like I said, this is an op-ed piece from Jason Bird. Instead, Onana made mistake after mistake. This report should have been about how Ten Hag's team taking the game to their opponents in a white-hot atmosphere and taking the temperature out of it with 3 fine goals and a bold attacking intent. Should have been about 19-year-old Alejandro Garnacho scoring his first Champions League goal with a flourish and having the cojones to celebrate in front of the furious home fans, cupping his ear and then reprising the Cristiano Ronaldo calma, calma gesture. Should have been about a stunning strike from captain Bruno Fernandes. Should have been about a lovely team goal finished by relentless determination of Scott McTominay. Maybe at 3-3, it should have been about a late winner from substitute Facundo Pellistri. Instead, the winger was horribly wasteful from just 6 yards. Indeed. Should also have been about another strong defensive performance from Harry Maguire and another show of character from McTominay, 2 players who Ten Hag was happy to sell in the last transfer window. Quote, "It's not about an individual," Ten Hag protested when questioned about Onana, and as well as his team attacked that they once again lacked control. But the fact that it was Onana who intensified that vulnerability is without question, even if it leads to even more questions. United had more efforts on goal, 18-17, but Onana made just 1 save, only 1. By comparison, Galatasaray's Fernando Muslera made 6. The final whistle, no United player apart from reserve goalkeeper Alte Bayindir went over to console Onana. Of course, Ten Hag will want to persist with the Cameroonian with whom he worked at Ajax, although he didn't sign him when he was available for free in 2022, but this is the kind of poor display even he cannot ignore. The blunders mean that no team in the Champions League this season has dropped more points than United from winning positions while they've conceded 14 goals in just 5 games. Yes, Onana actually saved a penalty in the final minute that preserved their 1 victory at home to Copenhagen, but his mistakes hugely outweigh that. The 27-year-old is a liability. Welcome to hell, read a huge TIFO banner prior to kickoff, reminder of the hostility and provocative signs United faced in crashing out of the competition 30 years ago at the old Ali Sami Yen Stadium. Onana cannot blame the rain, which was torrential all day in Istanbul, with fears at one stage the game might be called off. But the pitch was not a factor. It wasn't. Instead, Onana must question his own technique, surely being the only sweeper keeper in history who wants to remain rooted to his goal line when the opposition have the ball. Ten Hag sounded like a man in denial as he hailed the brilliance of Hakim Ziyech's free kicks. Ziyech on loan from Chelsea's another player he knows well, having also coached him at Ajax. Nothing brilliant about either of his 2 goals. As Ziyech struck, there was a huge gap between Fernandes and Rasmus Højlund, which had been occupied by 2 Galatasaray players. That is on Onana, as was his awful decision to take a step to his left, which did not allow him to easily field Ziyech's relatively weak, low effort that actually went down the center of the goal. If he simply stayed still, he could have bent and caught it. Similarly, after McTominay restored United's 2-goal advantage, Onana was equally at fault. Ziyech's free kick from the right was good. Maybe substitute Kabi Mainu should have headed it away. Fatally, the teenager midfielder looked unsure. Was there a call? And sort of ducked under it, with Onana somehow scooping it into his own net. As ever, he was stuck on his line. A more competent keeper comes and cleans that out, or less advisedly, demands his defender heads it. Neither happened. Onana did not take responsibility as he again allowed Galatasaray back in with the Turkish champion seizing the opportunity. So that's just Jason Burt discussing it. Onana was accused of making teammates nervous and inviting a shoot-on-sight policy for opponents after his disastrous errors. Paul Scholes said Onana's concentration is poor and that he complicates simple saves. Owen Hargreaves, meanwhile, questioned his technique after the mistakes at Rams Park. Stephen Warnock described his errors as disastrous. Managers have to take responsibility for their signings, Paul Scholes said. It's a shame as he looked okay in the last few weeks. He makes unconventional saves. And in the Champions League, I think he's too relaxed and his concentration isn't there. For a keeper, concentration's everything. On the second goal, Scholes, quote, "It's a terrible mistake, and I'm not sure what he's trying to do. He makes his whole team nervous. He makes simple saves look difficult. And even the third goal, I don't think he should be beaten. He looks like he'll concede every time, so teams will just say, shoot at it." Paul, duh. Scholes again. "You cannot legislate for goalkeeper errors, and it's happening too often now. I don't know what they do about it now." Hargreaves. "There were huge moments in the game. They were in control of the game, and there was a mistake from Onana. They're making mistakes that you cannot make in the Champions League, conceding soft goals. His technique looks unconventional. There's more pressure being a keeper at Manchester United. He's played in huge games before. Confidence, but he's made mistakes that are weighing on him. There are things he can tidy up with the goalkeeper coach. Those simple ones bouncing around him, he'll have to tidy up. Players will keep trying that." Stephen Warnock on BBC 5 Live. "Manchester United should have won this game. Andre Onana has let them down." Onana's conceding goals came with United leading. Ziyech in the 29th, Ziyech in the 62nd, Turkoglu in the 71st. Ten Hag slammed his defending, but he refused to blame Onana. "We win and lose together. He's okay. As I said, it's not about individuals. We played so good, I have to compliment the team, but I also have to criticize the team. We're not defending good enough." Onana celebrated wildly after United scored their second, but Ten Hag rejected suggestions his keeper lost focus and preferred to praise Ziyech's free kicks. So the question is, Four-Card, good morning. Four-Card says Man U is just too much pressure. But Ducker wants Ten Hag to drop Onana. Simple truth is that if an outfield player had committed the volume of errors that Andre Onana has for Manchester United this season, he would have been dropped before now. So Ducker is on the Onana out camp. Throwing players under the bus is no way to foster trust and unity, and Onana will need some love, but a period out of the spotlight may be the best thing for him at the moment. But literally, you look at the Telegraph, 1, 2, 3, 4 articles on Andre Onana. 4. It's the first time that I can remember in recent times that one particular player had more than one article on them. You had 2 op-eds, analysis, and an article. 4 articles on one player. So that's where it is. With the Guardian, Barney Ronay was there. Welcome to Chaos. United made to pay for incompetence. So that's, the Telegraph went nuts. Not necessarily a surprise. But the standings now after what happened yesterday with all the chaos and the 2 matches that if you'd bet the over with your Christmas side dishes, you'd be in okay shape. Group A, Bayern clinched. 4-1, 13 points, 8 points clear with a match to go. Big point for FC Copenhagen against Galatasaray. So now you have 3 teams separated by 1 point. Last match day, Copenhagen hosting Galatasaray, Manchester United hosting Bayern Munich in a game that means nothing for Bayern Munich. But does Bayern Munich take the joy in perhaps knocking Manchester United out of the competition altogether? I would say they would. Group B, Arsenal winning big yesterday. 4 points clear. They've won the group. PSV is in second. PSV needs a result to at least distance themselves from Lens, who's at 5 points. Lens and Sevilla play last match day on the 12th of December. Arsenal at 12 points, PSV at 8, Lens at 5, Sevilla at 2. And Lens has lost their last 3 to get into this position. Group C. Real Madrid clear of Napoli by 8 points. Group C is theirs. But Napoli, Braga, Union Berlin, 7 points, 4 points, 2 points. That's what you're staring at in Group C. Group D, it's going to be interesting. Group D, last match day. 1 and 2, Real Sociedad and Inter go up against each other. Salzburg and Benfica go up against each other to try to figure out the Conference League spot. And then comes Jason. Wow, this is a shock. Morning,
What's
dude.
up?
Hey, you tell me. This is a surprise visit.
I'm taking a break from my history research as we're working on this history of Atlanta soccer podcast with Atlanta United. Fired up about Matt Miazga. Have you talked about Matt Miazga yet?
No, I was just wrapping up opening kickoff, by the way, which was about Andre Onana, so I could spend most of the show.
Andre Onana. I don't know if Andre Onana could catch a cold right now.
No.
It's really bad.
Yeah. And so I was going over the fact that the Telegraph had 4 separate articles on him this morning.
You know, I mean, goalkeeping is so difficult, and I feel like once you make a couple of mistakes and you get in your head, it gets worse. I don't know how Manchester United is going to deal with this. He's a great shot stopper when he's on, but he's also costing them way too much right now. So, you know, and they've got enough issues, let alone the goalkeeper. They've got a ton of issues as it is.
Yes, they do. And so that was opening kickoff, brought to us by our friends at Kickoff Coffee and kickoffcoffeeco.com. Don't forget to use the code SoccerDownHere15. And then they, in turn, take 10% reinvested into the youth game and youth initiatives that they have earmarked. Very cool stuff from our friends at Kickoff Coffee and kickoffcoffeeco.com. Because we don't have an afternoon show or an evening show, when stuff like Matt Miazga breaks, it ends up being the next morning. And so I figured I was going to be spending a lot of time this morning discussing Matt Miazga and walking folks through what Laurel Fowler came through with at Queen City Press. It's a great blow-by-blow with all the evidence and stuff that she got. From 30,000 feet before we go into what she discovered, what's been on your mind about Matt Miazga?
Yeah, I mean, Miazga, I think there is a broader conversation about refereeing in general. And look, we all do it in terms of getting fired up about a call. And then some people will take it a step further and feel like it's intentional from referees to hurt their team. And some fan bases and or people with voices will then rally people around that. And there's been a lot of this with Cincinnati that's been very strange. Refereeing's a hard job. And even with VAR and with all of the additional things that are there to help, it's really difficult. And game management's one of the hardest things to do. And I watched this match with the Red Bulls and with Cincinnati. And Victor Rivas is one of the best referees you're going to find in this league. And I think he's very good at letting people kind of blow some steam off and calm down and yell it out, and then getting things back to where they need to get. That doesn't work with Matt Miazga. And it's not just a Victor Rivas thing. If you want to yell about Victor Rivas, or you want to yell about the VAR in this situation, or you want to yell about anybody else involved in it, you need to look at Matt Miazga's overall season. Great defender. He was the defender of the year in MLS. I did not vote for him, mainly because of his behavior personally. But he's there, and he's best 11, and he's a great center back, and he's had a great season for FC Cincinnati. He also is constantly on the edge of blowing his top, and that's not new, and that's a huge issue. And it showed in this game where Rivas gave him a lot of leeway all night. And at the end of regulation, he gives him the yellow card because Miazga stuck his finger in Rivas's face, I think 3 times.
Yeah.
It was multiple. As Rivas tried to defuse the situation, he just kept going, and he kept going. Get the yellow. Okay. Doesn't matter. It doesn't carry over into the shootout, as we were reminded, because that rule changed not that long ago. And I'm sorry, the explanations of the just trying to show love to his former fans, that's a joke. And it's really insulting people's intelligence to try to continue with that. He did it. And if you watch the video, maybe that was his initial intention. I'm not going to get into the mind of Matt Miazga. But when he got the reaction that he did, which was not favorable, he shrugged and kept doing it. So he knew exactly what was happening. Rivas tried to get him to stop. Tried again. I think there was a third time to try to get him to stop. And he showed him another yellow to get him to leave. Okay. That's accumulation because Miazga did something that we didn't think was possible. He got 3 yellows in 2 games and got a yellow card accumulation suspension. That's dumb enough.
Mm-hmm.
I asked Mike Conti about this, who covers all the sports. I've talked to other people. I have not come up with an example of a player in any major American league going into the referee's locker room after the game. I've not come up with an example of that. I'm sure it's happened somewhere. I know there's probably a minor league somewhere that it's happened. I'm sure. It's never happened in MLS before. Don't think it's happened in any of the other major sports. Why? Because players know they're not supposed to do that. You cannot let that go. I thought 3 games was minimal, but they have changed, according to U.S. Soccer. They have changed some of the guidelines when you start to get into referee abuse and referee assault. I've served on the Georgia Soccer Discipline and Protest Committee before. It's been a while, and the rules have changed as I've learned. But assault and abuse are very, very serious issues. And they go beyond just a pure league. Okay, you're suspended for a game. Okay, you're suspended for 2 games. There are minimums and there are baselines when you get into these things. Whenever you get into this realm, you have to decide if it falls under referee assault. And this did not. And it could have, but it did not. An assault is not purely punching somebody. It's not purely that. I'm actually pull up the definition for you real quick, just so you know what it is. Because this is important. It hopefully won't happen again, but it's important to have these, I think, understandings of where this stuff is. So assault, obviously hitting, punching, choking, spitting, grabbing, running into, kicking or throwing at, damaging uniform or damaging personal property. And when you find out that he goes into the referee locker room, those last 2 are what kind of jump out to me. I'm like, okay, did any of that happen? From Laurel Faller's very detailed explanation of what happened, no. But he was absolutely out of line. Abuse is defined as a verbal statement or physical act not resulting in bodily contact, which implies or threatens physical harm to a referee or the referee's property or equipment. Abuse includes, but is not limited to, foul language, abusive language, spewing any beverage, spitting at, verbal threats. Doesn't sound like he quite got to verbal threats. Luckily, Rivas was not there. He was in the shower, or he was not engaging with Miazga, which was very intelligent from Victor Rivas' standpoint. Sure, he heard what was going on because it sounds like he was being F-bombed a couple of times by Miazga, which would fall under referee abuse. 3-game minimum. That's changed. It used to be higher than that. It's changed. That's what you go with here. It could have been worse, but you cannot let it go. You absolutely 100% cannot say, well, he was suspended for a game because of accumulation, and yeah, it's okay. No. Flat out, he went into the referee's locker room. That cannot happen. What would have happened if he had seen Rivas there? With whatever state of mind he's in, 80 minutes after the game has ended, over an hour after the game has ended, team's getting ready to leave to get on a plane to fly back home. And he wants to go bust into the locker room when he sees the security guard isn't looking and yell at the referee some more. After he yelled at him at the end of after he yelled at him for 90 minutes, yelled at him at the end of regulation, and then yelled at him again during the shootout. That's a huge red flag.
And had 80 minutes to think about what he did and goes back 80 minutes later.
Yeah, and there's just no way around it. 3 games, I think, is lenient. It is the minimum. I think you had to get 3 because my question would be, we know this is a league suspension. My question would be, was there consultation with U.S. Soccer on it? Because it does get into the referee abuse level of characterization. And that can go to the federation. It doesn't always. Again, from my experience with Georgia Soccer's discipline and protest, there were things that would stay at the local level, and then there were things that would go above. But then also the appeals process, and I don't know what agreements are in place between the league and U.S. Soccer. I would assume that the league's agreement with the federation is that they have their own appeals process in-house, and you don't appeal to the federation. In Georgia Soccer, you can appeal to the federation. That's why you have to do things by the book in terms of hitting those minimums and not exceeding maximums in terms of penalties, because the appeals go higher. In MLS, I don't think they do. If I remember correctly, the disciplinary committee has a U.S. Soccer member on it, I think. So I would assume that's the agreement, is that it stays in-house. And the appeals process was done here. But I would assume that the federation was in consultation on this. 3 games is on the minimum side of referee abuse. It sounds like, because of the way things played out, that it didn't go further than that, which is good. Again, Rivas not being in front of Miazga at that point, I think, is a good thing. But you cannot have players do this, and they have to be suspended, and there cannot be any conversations about, well, he was just upset and he was just emotional and he was just passionate. No, you cannot go into the referee's locker room. Just like if you're a youth coach, you cannot follow a referee to their car. You cannot do these things and yell at these people doing their job, who gave you a lot of leniency during the game, because Miazga could have been yellow carded about 5 or 6 times during the game for the egregious dissent that he was displaying. It was really just the whole thing and the whole conversation around it. A lot of people are missing things here. You can't go into the referee's locker room. You do that, you open yourself up to getting a long suspension, and Miazga did.
Can we get into Pat Noonan here for a second?
Sure. I think this is a sidebar and really not that big of a deal, but okay.
So Pat Noonan expressed some frustration with some of the details, and this I'm going from Laurel's piece.
And that was initially after the Professional Referees Association, if I'm not mistaken, put their tweet out.
Yeah.
That Noonan then responded to in his media availability.
Yes.
Okay.
And so he expresses some frustration with some of the details coming out. He says, quote, "It's difficult because you're missing a key piece." He said this ahead of the conference semi. "Whether he's defender of the year or not, he's a key piece to our group and not available for Saturday. So we've had good conversations. Matt's been apologetic. He understands that this has to be a learning moment as far as some of those trends that built up to this. And, disappointed he's not going to be available, but I think he'll learn from this."
Oh, that's fine.
As to how it played out, it's a possibility because of the first yellow card. That's where he can be better. I'm still trying to figure out what the second yellow card, when the last time a player got a yellow card for having an interaction with a fan base.
Managers do this. That's coach speak.
Right. I don't know when that's happened.
Defending his player. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's wrong. It's incorrect, but there's nothing wrong about defending your player in this way.
Right. And then the other element, and I want to get the wording correct, with Noonan having to say that there were accusations of fabrications.
This is where we get into, okay, what, and I'm assuming, because this has seemed to be the sticking point for a lot of people, was it a security person or was it an FC Cincinnati person who got Miazga out of the locker room? It doesn't matter. Number one, it really doesn't matter. And to make that the issue is trying to distract you. I mean, I feel like we're watching South Park and it's Johnny Cochran in court on South Park. That. It's like, ooh, distraction over here.
Yeah.
No, he went to the referee's locker room. Doesn't matter who got him out of there. And it sounds like both were involved in getting him out of there.
Yeah.
According to what Laurel Fowler was able to discover. Doesn't matter. all of the initial parts of it are fine. But yeah, when you start trying to throw that out there, look, he's got to defend his player, and I get that and I understand it, but you can't make it okay because the initial reporting was that a security person was the one who forcibly removed, I think was the terminology that was used.
Yeah.
Or it was an FC Cincinnati security person. If he's dropping F-bombs, yelling in the referee's locker room, going first past the door, second past the interior hallway in there to get to the actual room where referees are, and he's dropping F-bombs about wanting to talk to the referee, none of the rest of it about, well, it wasn't a security person, it was one of our comms people. Neither one is good. Like, you're already into the referee abuse situation here. You've already crossed the line. So it doesn't matter. And trying to make that the issue, stop it. And I know there's been a little bit of an upkick here on the conversation, at least out of Cincinnati. The reporter who was one of the eyewitnesses to this, yes, he was, I guess, a former referee or maybe a current referee. And referees on LinkedIn, this is crazy, I know. Referees on LinkedIn, when they say they're a referee, it's under the jurisdiction of U.S. Soccer. Referees don't work for U.S. Soccer. MLS referees don't work for U.S. Soccer. They get paid by MLS for working in the league. That doesn't mean he can't be an unbiased eyewitness to this because he refereed some amateur games locally. Stop it. Stop it. Stop trying to find a way to excuse this. This is egregious. This is as bad as it's ever been in terms of a referee abuse situation at the professional level in this country. This is horrific. Can't have it. Again, what if Rivas had been there when he comes out of that interior hallway? He's already wanting to get into an argument with him again. What happens then? What if Rivas tells him to leave and he pushes him? What if he yells at him and threatens him? Like, it's a good thing for Miazga that Rivas was not in the room right there. None of the rest of it matters. And Pat Noonan's part of it. Look, I don't like it. I feel like he's trying to create just some dissension in how people feel about it with, oh, well, it wasn't this person. It doesn't matter. Miazga did a dumb thing, and he's going to get suspended, and he's going to miss the rest of this season, and that's going to hurt FC Cincinnati. I had Columbus beating them with Miazga or without Miazga. I think Columbus is going to take care of business, and I'm sure there will be a lot of complaining afterwards. Complain about your defender of the year who went to the referee's locker room, which no other player in this league has ever done, ever in the history of the league.
PSRA. Now, this is the hearing with Major League Soccer. This is the blow-by-blow. Loud bang on the door, standing in the opening of our seating area, and this is from the PSRA report.
Even just the loud bang on the door, you've already created a huge problem.
Yep.
You've already created a huge issue just by doing it. If that was all it was, that's a huge issue, and that might get you a suspension.
Then standing in the opening of our seating area is Matt Miazga in a blue hoodie holding pizza, brown folded paper to-go food container. An official said, quote,
"Oh, hold on. If we're going to start pointing fingers at, well, this explanation is not the same. This description, I've heard that he had like an egregious amount of ketchup in something that he was carrying too. So was it pizza or was it a burger and ketchup? Maybe he wasn't even there at all. Maybe it was a ghost. Stop.
Fries with a lot of ketchup, maybe?
I've heard that one. Yeah. If we cannot definitively say what he was eating, then of course he's innocent.
Was he eating? Was he even eating?
No, we've been told he was eating at least something, but pizza and fries with a lot of ketchup. I mean, like, stop it. Doesn't matter. He had food. He had a hoodie on. He's yelling.
Yeah. Food, hoodie, Matt.
He's already into the locker room at this point.
An official said, quote, "You can't be in here. You need to leave," end quote. He continued to stare at the crew. The official repeated that he needed to leave. So that's two.
Yeah. When you got to tell somebody to leave twice, you got problems.
Miazga yelled back defiantly. Why? At that point, the crew realized he wasn't going to leave on his own. The official again repeated, "You can't be in here. You need to leave."
Yeah.
The
Problems.
official got up, started walking toward Miazga to attempt to usher him out, and kept repeating, "You need to leave. You need to leave." Miazga repeats, "Why? He's like Ross from Friends. Why? I want to talk to the effing referee." He used a different word, and I don't want to give us the explicit rating this early in the show.
Yeah.
The crew was very confused initially, as no players ever in our locker room.
It doesn't happen.
But this is when they realized this was a situation in which they needed help. Miazga was blocking the hallway to the exit.
That's kind of a problem as well. This is where you're getting into that borderline of going past just a minimum referee abuse. You're not just yelling, you're pinning somebody in a room.
Mm-hmm.
Like, again, the fact that we're having this conversation after a professional sports game, match, whatever, it's bonkers. There's no way to make this okay.
Miazga was blocking the hallway to the exit as an official tried to usher him to go back into the interior hallway. He stepped back and said, "Don't touch me!" Exclamation point.
So you don't let people leave you bust into their room, then you don't let them leave to get help, then you do the "don't touch me" thing. Yeah, you're looking for trouble.
Mm-hmm.
You found it.
At that point, the officials were afraid that he was going to escalate the situation, maybe even become violent, and they felt like they needed to get security.
Mm-hmm.
Miazga stepped back a bit, and an official was able to walk past him to the door down the interior hallway. So this is like past door number one. He's at door number two.
I don't know, because for one, I don't bust into referees' locker rooms. I don't know the setup of where that even is at Red Bull Arena. We're at Red Bull, we're so separate from where our broadcast position is. We're up on the roof, so we don't ever go down into that area. So I'm guessing, I don't think it's like a long interior hallway. I don't think it's like a separate section. It's probably one of those where, the room opens up and it's probably a hallway of, I don't know, like 6 to 8 to 10 feet or something to get into the room proper. I think that's probably what we're talking about.
Miazga stepped back a bit, and an official was able to walk past him down the interior hallway. He opened the door and made eye contact with the official's security guard posted across from the locker room and said, "Security, he can't be in here. He needs to leave." I think that's 7 times now.
Good job, Red Bull security, first off, for allowing him to get in. It sounds like they were a little distracted and not doing their jobs properly, because it shouldn't have even gotten to that point.
At that point, the security guard entered the locker room, approached Mr. Miazga, stood in front of him, grabbed his arm, and told him he had to leave. However, Mr. Miazga showed no signs of leaving when the security guard was trying to get him out. Mr. Miazga continued to yell and curse at the individuals in the room. Then, another unknown individual entered the locker room and forcibly removed Mr. Miazga with the security guard from the locker room. As they were leaving the locker room, that unknown individual was heard saying, quote, "What are you thinking going in there?" End quote.
Mm-hmm.
After they left the room, the security guard on the way out apologized to the officials for allowing the player to enter the locker room. Referee got out of the shower, dressed, and went out into the hall to ask where the breakdown occurred. The primary security guard, who's been there for years, apologized profusely, stating that they had a new person there assigned to the door of the officials' locker room, and someone had asked him for help down the hallway momentarily. He stated the new security guard was being sent off to write up an incident report for the stadium's records. PSRA has not seen this, but we assume that MLS has obtained this. The primary security guard on the way out to the vehicles again apologized for the incident, stated he's going to write up his own notes, report on the incident for the stadium's records. And there's video.
There's video, of him going in there, and I would assume that video is corroborating some of these reports of, I don't know if you have sound on the video, probably not. It's probably like security cam footage, but you would have at least the defiance of Miazga of going in and then not wanting to leave, and then the other people coming in. So he did a very bad thing. Imagine if this happened in the NBA, what the conversation would be. Imagine if this happened in the NFL, what the conversation would be. Imagine if this happened in Major League Baseball, the National Hockey League. It would be all over ESPN. It would be all over everybody talking about this. There's no way to justify it. Absolutely no way to justify Miazga's actions. The FC Cincinnati staffer, who I think we later discover that that's the person who came in last. And yeah, maybe that's the one who actually Miazga reacted to and was removed with. To say, what do you think? What are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to get out of this? What are you doing? Like, that's the person who had the common sense in this outside of the referees who are just doing their job and should not have to deal with this, should not be subjected to it. So 3 games, I think, is light.
Yeah. I was going to ask what you would have done in this case.
Well, I mean, I'd have to, when I did discipline and protest, precedent was very, very big to me. And yeah, sometimes that changes. Sometimes you have to change what has been done in the past. But I would like to know when anything like this has happened, and you're probably getting into like semi-pro and amateur kind of situations and competitions, because I don't know, most professional players, especially players who have played with the national team, don't act in this way. Just a wild thought there. So you'd have to try to figure out, for me, what if there's a precedent, if there is a very clear comparison to something that's happened in the past. It doesn't sound like there's enough. Referee assault is a very high threshold in my mind, because of the severe penalties that come with it. It doesn't sound like there's enough there, even with the threatening situation that kind of comes into it. So you're getting into abuse, which is kind of a wide range of where that can go. That's a 3-match minimum. Longer suspensions may be imposed, and generally that's going to go with repeat offenders. And luckily, you don't have any of that here. I don't think he's been popped for anything referee abuse related before. Not doing this, obviously, but you can get into referee abuse categories on the field. I don't think he's threatened a referee on the field, that kind of stuff. If he has, then yeah, it'd absolutely have to be suspended longer. For me, and I know it's not the same thing, I think 6 games is the maximum that the league can suspend anybody, based off the agreements with the MLSPA. And I don't know if that's a fact. We're kind of judging based off other suspensions. Dante Van Zier, for example, very different situation, but 6 games was what he got. We've seen other 6 games. I know in the past, Ricardo Clark got a much longer one for losing his mind on Carlos Ruiz. 6 games is kind of where I thought this would go, personally, with Miazga. I had previously thought there might be some minimums on this of like the 3 months. I think in the past there was a 3-month minimum if you were found guilty of referee abuse, but that has changed. I went and did my research. 3 games is the minimum now, and they gave him the minimum. I would have probably went a little bit higher because to me, entering the referee's locker room and then not wanting to leave, that takes it beyond the minimum, in my opinion. That's egregious. So I would have went higher, and I would have probably went 6.
Yeah, the only things I could find on a very quick cursory search of soccer player charges into referee locker room had to do with assault on the field and instant arrests and things like that. Nothing about charging into a locker room.
Yeah, I'd have to look. I mean, the thing where it gets a little tricky is you just don't have the exact situation in a lot of competitions because, most youth competitions, you don't have a referee locker room. Most amateur competitions, you don't have a referee locker room. I don't remember any of this in any of the previous. I don't remember it in the USL. I don't remember it in the old A-League. I've never heard of anything like this. And that's why I would go beyond the minimum in this situation.
Since I've got you.
Yeah, I got a couple more minutes before I get back to my research.
Okay. Well, first off, before you go, I want to ask about the research. So hold the question and we'll talk about the series. What did you think about the conference semifinals?
I thought Columbus was the most impressive team. out of the four winners. I thought they were the best, even though Orlando was scrappy and took that game as long as they could. I thought Columbus played the best. I was surprised at LAFC, how cynical and defensive they were. Feels very different than how they used to be under Bob Bradley. And look, they won a title. So, I mean, full credit to Steve Cherundolo for recognizing that, hey, maybe they just need to be hard to beat sometimes. But I was a little surprised at how quickly they went to that. Seattle's got some rebuilding to do. They've got a good core to build around, though. So I think it's really doable for them to still be a top team in the West. But they got to get a game changer in the attacking third. And that could be a winger. That could be a 9. It's one or the other, in my opinion. They've got to get that. I'm sure Niko will have more thoughts on that when you talk to him here in a little bit. Cincinnati, Philadelphia. It was funny how everybody after the Saturday night games was like, "Oh, these games weren't as much fun as the best of 3 games." Well, it was Cincinnati and Philadelphia. Like it's not really set up to be a fun game for the neutral to watch. It's a compelling game, and I think this is something that we have to, in my opinion, use the right terminology when we talk about this stuff. It's a playoff game. It's a knockout game. Of course it's compelling. And it was looked like it was going to go to extra time. Really good game in that sense. In terms of the soccer that I enjoy, no, it was not an enjoyable game that way, but it was compelling and it was interesting. And Philadelphia came up short. I thought they were going to come up short in the previous round. They didn't. I think you saw that Philly is at the end of a little bit of an era here, and they've got to evolve a little bit, in my opinion. Cincinnati evolved what Philly used to be. Cincinnati is a team that can do a lot of the things that Philadelphia does, but they have a player in Lucho Acosta. They have a player in Bupenza. They have players who can play when they need to play. Philly doesn't have enough of that, and they're going to, for whatever's going on with Alejandro Bedoya, which is one of the more bizarre situations in the league that I've ever seen, where you've got the manager basically saying, like, I wasn't in the loop on this decision.
I think there was a miscommunication there.
Yeah, that's nuts. That's an issue. Kai Wagner going, which he should at this point, that's going to be a big replacement for them because you look at how many chances he's created over the years. Julian Carranza probably getting offers. That's going to be a big change for them because I think he's the more important of their 2 forwards, more important than Uwa, who's a little more one-dimensional. That's 3 big players that you got to replace. And you've got great kids coming through, but they're kids and they're different. And can they play at that level? I don't know if you're going to find a left back who contributes as much as Wagner. So, questions about Philly in that regard. And the other game was Houston. And I thought Houston was the better team. And I know I'm in the minority on this. I don't think it was a handball on the line. I know a lot of people have said that it was. I think his arm's down by his side. We don't know what a handball is anymore.
Yeah.
And I talked about it on AST on Tuesday night. I'm all for IFAB and FIFA having the conversations about getting dissent out of the game, getting time wasting out of the game, the conversation about sin bins or orange cards. I'm all for trialing that. I know it's traditionalists are throwing things right now. They're throwing their oatmeal across the room, but we need to try some different things. And if that is something you can try, they have done trials at low levels in England with it, and it's been successful. Okay, let's see it at a little bit higher level. Let's see what that can look like. Mostly for dissent, but I think you will see some fouls if you have a third category. If you have an in-between, a yellow and a red, I think you'll have something in between. But the most important thing that IFAB and FIFA have to deal with is the definition of handball and making it consistent. It's a problem when they have the rule as it's written now, and it's changed, it feels like, every year or every other year over the last 5 years. It's hard for me to keep up with, and I try to put work into keeping up with these things. And these aren't just little subtle changes either. For example, they changed the idea of where the arm starts for handball. It used to be at the top of the shoulder back in the day. Then it became the shirt sleeve. And the Premier League actually uses the shirt sleeve. They use the logo badge on the sleeve as the point where they draw offside. Well, that's not actually correct according to IFAB, which is always good when the Premier League is doing things differently than the laws of the game, because what they changed it to is even with the armpit. So it is a little bit on the arm. It's not the top of the shoulder like it was back in the day. You've gotten a little more space, but it's even with the armpit. And I think the idea is that if you raise your arm, you're not making yourself bigger with that part of your arm. It's still just part of your arm. So, okay, that's one change that has evolved over these last few years. The whole idea about deflections. Remember when the law changed initially and you had a whole bunch of handballs called in the Premier League as referees called it according to the laws of the game?
Yep.
And everybody flipped out. And the Premier League just said, well, we're not going to call it that way anymore.
Yeah.
Which they did. And okay, that's what they do. But then you have the situation where in UEFA competitions, you're getting from some leagues twice as many handball penalties in UEFA competition than you are in the domestic league.
Mm-hmm.
Because UEFA is calling it by the letter of the law. Now, there is a judgment in it. The deflection is something that I think you're going to have to figure out how to put that language in the law itself, because it doesn't feel fair. And I think you have this idea, and we've talked about it with offside as well, which is another thing that they're talking about, and I think it's good. We have an idea of how the actual laws of the game are written, and then we have an idea of how the game should feel. If we've played it, if we've coached it, if we've been around it, if we've watched it all of our lives, we know what feels right and feels wrong. When a ball deflects from a very short distance, or it deflects off of their body into their arm, and they're not with their arm out trying to block the initial shot, that feels harsh to give the handball. And I feel like a lot of the conversation around the Newcastle handball has been incorrect because so much of the focus has been on the deflection, which doesn't negate the handball. That's not true. A lot of people have called the UEFA recommendations laws, which they're not. Those were UEFA's football board, like their committee of people who want things to improve in the game. It was a recommendation to UEFA, and a lot of that was for UEFA to then go lobby IFAB. That's not a law. So that you can't point to that. You can't point to the deflection. I feel like it's still wrong because I don't think his arm he wasn't trying to make himself unnaturally bigger. When you get into the actual law and you read it, the deflection part isn't the issue in the Newcastle Livramento handball. I think his arm is in a natural place. You can justify it based off his movement, and they shouldn't have called handball there. That's my issue. And in watching the games yesterday, every time a handball would come up, I was wrong on what they actually called. Like, I'm trying to sit here and go, okay, is it by the laws of the game? It's not about the deflection. Did they make themselves unnaturally bigger? Oh, that doesn't look like a natural movement. Yeah, that's going to get called. No, it's not called. Then it'd call one. It's like, what?
Yeah, the McTominay handball, everybody was like, what? Just one way or the other.
Yeah, bizarro world. So, like, yeah, the McTominay one was the first half one. I thought that was a handball. Yeah. I thought that was going to get called, and it wasn't. Like, they've got to get clarity, define it well, and then stick with it for a period of time. And I know that's a problem, but you have to do that so we can figure out if it's going to work, if players can adjust. Don't change it one year and then change it another year and then change this little part of it another year. Can't do that. I know IFAB's got to worry about dissent, obviously, with you got players busting into locker rooms at this point. You have to deal with dissent towards referees or you're not going to have referees. That's a huge issue. You got to deal with the way offside has changed in the VAR world. That's a big issue. Yes, maybe there is a need for a third category of important fouls to where it's not a red, it's not sending them off. It's worse than just giving them a warning. It's sending them off for 10 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever. And I know the conversation came up this morning on Morning Footy of, well, that's going to potentially have injury issues for players because they cool down and they have to go back. I got that. I understand. So let's trial it in a league higher than amateur, which is where it's been trialed so far in England. And let's see. Because in the reports of the trials, everything went well. And I didn't see any issues about injuries being created by that absence, that 10 minutes, 10 minutes in a 90-minute game. Didn't see any issues with injuries being added. Maybe they weren't tracking that. That's something they need to track. All those things are important. The handball rule is the most important thing right now. It is the absolute most important thing.
All right. So I'm going to send you back to your research for the project, but what's it been like to do this project where you've been looking at the history of the sport? And where are you right now in your research, sir?
Well, we've got a couple episodes, a couple chapters of episodes out. There's a lot of content out there for you. The History of Atlanta Soccer podcast. Get it Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We've gotten through the Chiefs ending in 1972. We got all the prehistory. We've still got the Apollos. We've still got the second version of the Chiefs. We've still got the Georgia Generals to talk about a little bit.
Our Spangled Soccer.
Yeah, Star Spangled Soccer. We still got a little bit of the Atlanta Attack to talk about. I think they're going to pop up a little bit here and there. The Ruckus, the Silverbacks. It's been great to talk to folks about those eras because it's not that long ago, but it is long ago now because we're all old.
Yes.
It doesn't feel like that long ago, but that when we initially started talking about this, I think we had 6 to 8 episodes kind of nailed down. And now we've got, I don't know how many hours of content are going to come from this. Like Ruckus and Silverbacks was all going to be in one. Now it's going to be 2 separate ones. I will give you guys a little bit of a tease. We did have a conversation with Boris Strakunica, the former owner of the Silverbacks. Boris spoke with us. John Latham, one of his co-owners, also spoke with us. Jason Smith, head coach who took them to the championship game in 2007, he spoke with us. So we've got some pretty in-depth stuff coming. And then once we get into next year, we're going to talk about the grassroots growth of the game. We're going to talk about the growth of the women's game. You're going to hear from some former Atlanta Beat players in that. You're going to hear about the prehistory of Atlanta United, and then obviously a whole lot more on Atlanta United's history. So a whole lot more content coming, and we're nowhere close to being done.
Nothing like sitting there and saying, yeah, this project will do this, and this, and then just have it explode, right?
Yeah, we've tried to space it out, and getting the playoffs this year and trying to drop things around that. So we've kind of got it spaced out now to where we should take it through the start of next season. There'll be a little bit of a break during the holidays, obviously, but we'll have a couple more episodes, I think, coming out before we get to the holidays. And then once training camp starts back, we'll have more episodes coming on a more regular basis to take you up to the start of the season.
No, it's been fun what you and Sandy McAfee and everybody there at Atlanta United have been able to piece together. It's a great listen, so go listen if you haven't been listening. Do you have Red Bull or you have your Red Bull handy?
I do, of
get
course.
Back to your research. There you go. Which one's the flavor of the day?
I went peach for this one today.
Okay. All right. Well, I will catch up with you soon, partner. Thanks for dropping in, and your timing was perfect because we hadn't talked about Matt Miazga, and you came in at the absolute perfect moment to carry us through it. So thanks.
Don't defend Matt Miazga. He did this to himself. Matt screwed Matt, if you're a WWE fan.
There you go.
He's got to learn from this because he's too good of a player to be doing these kinds of dumb things and hurting his team going into a conference final. And it's a dumb thing. And hey, I'm all for learning and adapting the behavior and getting better on the other side of it. And that's what he's got to do now because this was egregiously dumb and dangerous. And it's something that the league had to crack down on hard. I think they could have cracked down a little bit harder, but okay. Now he's got an opportunity to redeem himself, and we'll see how he handles it.
More than half of his cards, I believe, are for doing dumb things.
Way more than half. For dissent, and that's an issue that was there before he decided to go into a locker room. So it's got to change. Maybe this is the wake-up call. Again, he's too good of a player to be getting involved in these kinds of dumb things.
No doubt about it. Thank you, partner. We'll catch up soon.
Adios.
All right, that's Jason. And so Jason comes on, timing perfect. We got to talk about Matt Miazga a lot this morning. Niko Moreno coming up bottom of the hour, and we will continue to discuss it with him. Jason mentioned what's going on with Seattle, and Seattle's got about a dozen decisions that they have to make with expiring contracts. We'll get into that. We'll get into MLS Best 11 with Niko and get into everything going on from the semifinals, get the finals preview, all that kind of stuff with Niko coming up. Bottom of the hour, the last half hour of the show. But no, it was fun to have Jason. When Jason popped up in the green room, I'm like, oh, timing was perfect. So, he must have been listening to the show. Oh, by the way, reminder, once again, we are reissuing the Atlanta, since Jason was mentioning the series, we are reissuing the Atlanta is American Soccer scarf for the holidays. It is being reissued. The large box is being sent here to Office HD. It's a fundraiser for our friends at with the Marshall Islands as they try to build their program, futsal and national teams and all that kind of stuff. So we're reissuing Atlanta is we're reissuing the Atlanta is American Soccer City scarf. So we're reissuing that for the holidays, and you can pick it up 25 plus. And the Abster has said that the Abster Mobile will be able to do the bidding of the shipping folks, and she will help out if you are local. So reach out, and we will be more than happy to send them out to you, 25 plus shipping, or if the Abster Mobile comes and drops things by, then we'll do it that way. So reissuing that. We're also going to have another scarf coming up in short order that is not a reissue. It is an original, and it is getting everything squared away so we can help out our friends at the Marshall Islands Soccer Federation in 2024. So once again, great to have Jason drop by and look at the Matt Miazga situation. And you guys were listening to the conversation, Abby, before she left, surprised that Miazga only got a 3. She was thinking 5, especially verbal assault, so we got the minimum 4 card. For me, 3 isn't enough. Should be 5 minimum. Wiley Coyote, yeah, it isn't enough. Wiley was thinking 10. Nix. It'd be so funny if Miazga's absence costs them the cup. He will laugh. Did I hang on to that note long enough? But Nix will laugh, and then Abby was out the door to get brunch. So once again, thanks to everybody who was hanging out with us this morning on the Twitch pitch, and we got to break down what Laurel Fowler wrote. And this will be today's required reading. It's Laurel's work, and we'll see if we're efforting trying to get Laurel on to discuss what's going on. So, yeah, Laurel broke that last night, and it is a long thing, but it's worth your time. It's worth your time to read it and just to understand. And I think we counted 7 times in the transcript from the PSRA where Matt Miazga decided that, no, he wanted to stay and he wanted to talk to the effing ref, using a different word, holding food of some description. He wanted to talk to the effing ref. What we did not get into in the Laurel Fowler piece, got to the PSRA, then we had the J.J. Pavlik at Bad Dog. He was the one, and he was the eyewitness who was waiting on an interview with Brandon Vasquez. So here's what Pavlik said in his eyewitness account. Matt walked under the belt barrier, looked at both of us, meaning the 2 reporters, saw the tiny guard not paying attention, and entered the referee's locker room. She started shouting immediately at whoever was left inside the room. A member of FC Cincinnati came out of their locker room looking for Matt. That's when my colleague notified them that they need to immediately enter the referee locker room and get Matt out of there. They said, "Excuse me? Excuse me, what?" He repeated. Matt went into the locker room for the officials and is screaming his head off. FC Cincinnati member then sprang into action, entered the room, and quickly removed Matt Miazga. The commotion alerted higher levels of security, who came over and reprimanded the guard for allowing the player to walk right past them into the room. I just saw the post before kickoff, was going to put a piece out on it, but I'm just a small fish in MLS media, so I'd get overlooked. I mentioned it to a bigger outlet who said they'd back me if I put a piece out on it. Not sure who the Athletic spoke with, but the only other media present was facing the wall of the FCC locker room, had no clue what happened or who was involved. Red Bull's media was all in the Red Bull locker room media area. JJ was waiting for Vasquez to interview, which didn't happen because of after the incident. All of a sudden, FCC was running late, needed to get to the airport to catch your charter flight back. One of the referees came out after Matt was removed and went looking for the liaison at the arena to report the incident. Pavlik believed it was the fourth official, but it may have been center. Didn't get a great look at the ref during the chaos of FCC literally bear hugging Matt out of the room. Red Bull security never entered the room to remove Matt. The guard was frozen in place with deer in the headlights look on his face. If needed, I could even tell you Matt was holding a tray of food with a half-eaten burger, loads of ketchup, and some fries if that detail matters. I have no clue how to reach the disciplinary committee to share the eyewitness account of what happened. Hopefully this got to you guys in time to move forward on. So it's like 7 times Matt Miazga sits there and he's like, I want to speak to the effing ref. No, don't touch me. He's in the referee's locker room. And he wanted to talk to the effing referee. Knocks on a door, storms into the room. You can't do this. Which reminds me, I need to tell Bart about the time change for Monday. Since Prim and Proper, the review is at 10:30. I've got to remind Bart that he's a 10 o'clocker. But when Bart comes on Monday, we'll get his thoughts on it and just how bad things are. But yeah, in my cursory search for any kind of referee abuse, charging into locker rooms and things like that, literally it came from assault in other countries and referees instantly having folks arrested. Nothing about storming into a locker room. There was an incident that I saw in a high school event where, and I think it was football, American football, where in Ohio, yeah, it was an American football back 2 years ago. Football referees were trapped in a locker room and the door was blocked with a drink machine. So nothing to the extent of what we've seen from Matt Miazga in this case and what's been reported by Laurel Fowler, JJ Pavlik, and everyone else that was in and around the situation. This has not been seen. This has not been seen. I thought 3 was too lenient. Whatever the book was, I probably would have thrown it at him. Because you literally do not know. You do not know the possible escalation of this if Victor Rivas had stepped out and gotten into this discussion with Matt Miazga where he said that he wanted to see the effing referee. I want to see the effing referee. I want to see the effing referee. And he said that multiple times. Multiple times. He does not get a pass. If he's pissed about getting the yellows, he's pissed about getting the yellows. But you do not go past security, even if he was deer in the headlights. You don't go past security and go storming into the referee's locker room or their meeting area and locker room. To Jason's point, if Victor Rivas had come out of the shower and there had been some kind of confrontation with Matt Miazga, security, and officials, as he wanted to see the effing referee, Michael Valverde. And this is a game they won, imagine if they lost. Matt Miazga says, I want to see the effing referee. 5 times, I think we did it. We were running through the math. PSRA report. Moments of defiance. Let's just put it that way. Standing in the opening of the seating area, Matt Miazga. You can't be in here. You need to leave. Official repeated he needed to leave. Miazga, why? Official repeated, you can't be in here. You need to leave. 3, got up, started walking toward Miazga. You need to leave. You need to leave. 5, Miazga, I want to talk to the effing referee. Yeah, the crew was very confused initially. There's no players ever in our locker room. 2, I want to talk to the effing referees. Don't touch me. Showed no signs of leaving, continuing to yell and curse, so I can imagine that there's more than just 2 effing referees and 1 Y and a don't touch me. And then you get the individual from FC Cincinnati that J.J. Pavlik from Bad Dogs saw go in there in whatever sequence we're talking about here. But you're talking about, at the very least, 5 times the officials and people in that room, get out of here, you need to leave, you need to leave. Why? And then I want to see the effing referee. The bottom line from the absolute beginning is this is something that you do not do. And there was video. The initial refutations, I don't know, where you have the head coach of FC Cincinnati and now PSRA President Peter Manikowski is reviewing the comments of Pat Noonan, where he's talking about, fabrications. The fabrications part, Manikowski said he's in the process of reviewing Noonan's comments, already has been in discussions with the commissioner's office about the accusations of fabrications. So your coach mentions the word fabrications. Some of these things are fabrications. I mean, you can give yourself some line of plausible deniability, I'm sure. But Peter Manikowski of the PSRA is going to be looking into those quotes. This is a mess on multiple levels. But it starts from the idea that the officials' area is sacred. You don't go in there. Matt Miazga went in there and was belligerent about wanting to speak to the effing referee. Told repeatedly, no, you can't. You got to get out of here. He didn't. He gets 3. I think it's light. I want to see what happens with Pat Noonan and the discussion of fabrications with the PSRA and the league office. Miazga is also going to get an undisclosed fine for misconduct, required to attend behavior assessment training through the league's substance abuse and behavioral health program. Miazga appealed the ruling but was denied, according to one source with knowledge of the situation. So appealing it initially, and there was talk from Cincinnati that there was going to be another appeal put forward. And I want to try to get our info from Cincinnati. Appeal added to the length of the process. So Miazga gets a 3. I'm going to, according to Pat Brennan at the Cincinnati Enquirer, a league source with knowledge in the investigation told the Enquirer the video footage from Red Bull Arena was pertinent to the investigation's findings. 3+ weeks to do the investigation. Aggressive and hostile manner, according to the PSRA. PSRA wanted to initially call out and go, it's unacceptable, and as we recall, unprecedented violation of league policy and sporting integrity. Violations like this will not be tolerated. League source with direct knowledge of the events at Red Bull Arena took issue with the characterization of Miazga being hostile while being removed, telling the Inquirer that stadium security did not intervene. Source said an FC Cincinnati communications department employee helped move Miazga along from the area of the referee's locker room. So now we're waiting for, and once again, this is Pat Brennan, the Cincinnati Inquirer. So now we're waiting for a more in-depth or a different response from FC Cincinnati in this regard. But that's the words from Pat Brennan from Cincinnati Inquirer. Leading into this discussion. So Wiley says, Cincy, your boy's a dumbass. He cost you his presence for the rest of the year. Take your lumps. It should have been more than 3. Before Niko Moreno joins us in about 10 minutes, let's go through gossip, rumor, and innuendo, what to watch today. It's Europa League Day, which probably means it starts in about 90 minutes. And we'll get Nico's thoughts. So we'll get a bit of a palate cleanser and get you ready for the day before we get back into it with Nico coming up in about 10 minutes. The sale of Mo Salah next summer could open the door for Liverpool to sign Kylian Mbappe from PSG. That's from Team Talk. Mbappe remains committed to PSG this season. No indication of any interest from Liverpool. Lautaro Martinez expected to sign a new contract with Inter Milan despite being linked with Chelsea and Manchester United. Villa prepared to listen to offers for Leander Dendoncker, who's being monitored by Everton. Everton and Crystal Palace are interested in Leicester's 22-year-old Irish midfielder Casey McAteer. Spurs may reject offers for Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, Oliver Skip, and Rodrigo, ruled out until February with an ankle injury. AC Milan looking to ease their central defensive problems by signing Arsenal's Jakub Kivior on loan in January. That's from our friends at Calcio Mercato. Barcelona want to extend João Cancelo's loan deal for Manchester City until 2025. Chelsea are prepared to recall 19-year-old midfielder Andre Santos in January as they're not happy with his loan situation at Nottingham Forest. That's from Fabrizio Romano. Aston Villa have identified Lens midfielder Salis Abdul Samed as a potential replacement should they be forced to sell Douglas Luiz. Newcastle United interested in Stuttgart striker Serhou Girassi. Steve Cooper has the full support of Evangelinos Marinakis. Does that sound like a vote of confidence or not? Marinakis probably has seen the gossip, rumor, and innuendo and things left unsaid in the papers, where if things do not improve in Marinakis' mind and they let him, meaning him, Cooper, go, Cooper could end up at Crystal Palace taking over for Roy Hodgson. Lyon coach Fabio Grosso has been provisionally replaced by Academy coach Pierre Sage as the Ligue 1 club announced Thursday it had begun proceedings to dismiss Grosso. Oversaw just 1 win in 8 matches since taking over as coach from Laurent Blanc on September 16th. Leaves Lyon 3 points adrift at the foot of the table. Club said in a statement that the decision to move on from Grosso was driven by the poor run of results and came following an in-depth analysis of the first team situation. Lyon have just 7 points from 12 matches. Relegation starting to seem like a genuine prospect for the club that won 7 consecutive titles between 2001 and 2008. This is breaking from Agence France Presse. Grosso was injured last month when the Lyon team bus was stoned on its way to a game at Marseille, leaving him with cuts in the face that required stitches. So Lyon is provisionally replacing Fabio Grosso to replace him after 8 matches in charge. So there's that. What to watch, where to watch it, as we refer to as soccer on TV. The Apertura quarterfinals continue tonight on Telemundo at 9:10. Guadalajara and Pumas. Atlético San Luis got the win last night, 1-0. The León Club America match was nuts. You've got Europa League on 2 to NA, doubleheader at 12:45, AEK and Brighton and Hove Albion. Remember, that is our friend from San Jose, who is coaching at AEK Athens now. So Marseille and Ajax is at 3 o'clock. Puebla and Tigres is the early part of the doubleheader on 2 to NA quarterfinals at 7:30. Puebla and Tigres simulcast on Unimas. Europa League simulcast of Marseille and Ajax at 3 o'clock. D3 semifinals are at ncaa.com, doubleheader at 3 and 6:30. Paramount Plus has 11 gazillion games from Europa League. We'll go over the juice boxes and the side dishes for Christmas coming up in just a little bit. They've got them all. Let's face it. They've got all the games from Europa League, Europa Conference. Go to Golasso Show. Just watch them there. 3 games in the Brasileiro, 5, 6, 6:30. Grêmio, Goiás, Cruzeiro, Atletico Paranaense, and Rebel Bragantino Fortaleza. CONCACAF W Gold Cup, 2, 3, 7, and 8. VIX has Europa League, Europa Conference League, and that gets you through everything of what you should watch and where you can watch it. Juice boxes in Europa League today. AEK an underdog as Brighton comes to town. Atalanta favored against Sporting. Freiburg, big favorite on the minus side as Olympiacos comes to town. Rennes, favored on the road at Maccabi Haifa. It is pretty much throwing a blanket over the table. They throw a tablecloth over Sparta Prague and Betis. They're within the margin of error at a plus 165. Sturm Graz on the minus side hosting Rakov. West Ham, a big favorite on the road at TSC. Bayer Leverkusen, big favorite on the road at Haken. Liverpool, massive favorite at home against Lusk. Marseille on the minus side at 185 against Ajax, who's at a plus 480. Molde and Karabag. Molde, minus 111. Rangers, big favorite at home against Aris. Roma, favored on the road at Servette at a minus 130. Sheriff, a big underdog at home against Slavia Prague at a minus 139. Royal Union is an underdog going to Toulouse at a plus 152. Villarreal, favored at home on the minus side at 114 against Panathinaikos. And in Europa Conference League, as we blow through these matchups, once again, Breidablik and Maccabi Tel Aviv going at it right now. That one's done. Maccabi Tel Aviv at a minus 250 got the win 2-1. Astana and Dinamo Zagreb going on right now. Literally, it just started because, once again, it's in Azerbaijan, and it's already Saturday morning over there. Dinamo Zagreb favored going in at a minus 119. Also at 12:45, AZ Alkmaar, big favorite against Zrinjski. Besiktas, an underdog at home against Club Brugge. Bodo Glimt, a big favorite, minus 227 against Lugano. Balkani, favored at home against Victoria Pilsen. Ghent, a minus 625, hosting Zorya Luhansk. HJK, plus 131, hosting Aberdeen, who's a plus 210. Klaksvik, our friends in the Faroe Islands, an underdog at home against Slovan Bratislava at a plus 102. Lille, a minus 154 at Ljubljana. Aston Villa, minus 385 at home against Legia Warsaw. Kukaricki is an underdog, understandably. Ferencváros, a minus 204. Eintracht Frankfurt, favored at home at a minus 175 against PAOK. Fiorentina, minus 200 at home against Genk. Nordsjælland, favored at home against Fenerbahce at a plus 154. And Ludogorets Razgrad on the road, favored against Trnava at a minus 139. That's a boatload of games. It's like 36 games that we just went through with our juice boxes. So, yikes. There's a lot going on today. So, if you want to watch it, there's plenty of places to watch. Plenty of places to watch everything. So, there you go. We do have some folks who have, in the second division, they've announced, and some first divisions as well, player announcements. No real surprises yet when it comes to who has been kept and who has been waived off. News out of Messi and Friends, no real surprise. They sold out of 2024 season tickets. Red Bulls have signed Dylan Nealis to a new contract, and Earthquakes have signed Benji Kukanovic and Paul Marie to new deals. And so that's your early news from there. So, as promised, last half hour of the show on a Thursday. We know what that means. It means that we go to Seattle. We find out which cup of coffee Niko Moreno is on and we break everything down. So we're going to bring Niko in because it's a Thursday. There's Niko. What's going on?
What is going on, John? SDH family, how you guys doing? This is cup numero dos right here. Just
Okay.
getting ready for the day.
All right. So no real surprise that the discussion, because we don't have an afternoon drive show, and we don't have an evening show. Most of the discussion this morning has wrapped around Matt Miazga and the story that Laurel Fowler produced over at Queen City Press, and how completely off the walls this interaction apparently was. Matt Miazga announced an additional 3 plus a treatment program plus an undisclosed fine. Jason came on to talk about it in hour number 1, and it has monopolized the conversation as it should. Initial thoughts from you about the Miazga plus 3 and the fine and the situation in general once we finally got an answer leading into the conference finals?
Oh my goodness! Sorry, I was trying to fix this because my hat kept disappearing. Yeah. So honestly, look, it's kind of as any other investigation, as any other sort of behind the scenes moment. There isn't really a clear idea of exactly what happened, but the league taking the measures that they have is because there must be enough evidence of what really happened, the outburst. I understand Noonan coming in to defend his guy and talk about how things are being misconstrued and that things didn't really quite happen that way. And I mean, there's been a whole process from Cincinnati in just kind of having the back to Miazga, and that's understandable. But at the end of the day, Matt put himself in this situation, and there was obviously an altercation, and it's clear that there was things that he was at a place that he should have never been. So you can't sit here and tell me that he walked into their room calm and collectively, like Bill Cosby, trying to really talk to these people softly or whatever. That's just unrealistic. I think that there was an impulse. I think that there obviously was a frustration from Matt, someone who's had a record, a trajectory of this sort of issues. And now you've been caught. You did the time. You did the crime. Now you do the time. And it's that simple. He's hurting his team. He's been hurting his team. So hopefully, instead of trying to focus on what happened, what did not happen, I think Matt needs to look at himself, and Cincinnati needs to talk to their man and say, hey, this is the lesson to be learned of you not putting yourself in these sort of situations because something like this can happen. I really appreciate the steps above the suspension that MLS has taken, because it's something that should have no place in soccer and certainly no place in MLS. So I'm not saying they're going to make an example out of him, but if that's the way you want to take it, I'm okay with it.
Because at the bottom line, the end of the day is the officials' locker room area, however big it is, it's a place you do not go. You don't knock on a door. You don't burst in past security and say that you want to talk to the effing referee. And he didn't use the word effing. He used the actual word.
Right.
I mean, you don't go bursting in. You don't go, it's like, I want to talk to the effing referee. You don't go bursting into the room, A. Then B, you don't sit there and say, I want to talk to the effing referee. And the other officials, because Victor Rivas, like I said, Laurel Fowler did some great work over at Queen City Press breaking this all down. And on 5 occasions, he's in the room. Literally, he's in the room. You got to go. You can't be here. You got to go. You got to go. You got to go. Miazga's like, why? Well, dude, you're in the room, first and foremost. I want to talk to the effing referee. He says that twice. while he's trying to be told by the other officials in that room, you cannot be here. You cannot be here. And so, I mean, it's, now Jarrett's joining us. So it's a three-way dance here as we talk
What the
about.
hell did I do?
No, you didn't do nothing, man. It's like we're here with Niko talking about Matt Miazga. And
Jesus.
yes, that's where we are. And it's like he goes into the room 5 times. The officials say, you cannot be in here. Miazga, I want to talk to the referee. Goes up to, one of the dudes goes up to him and touches him. And he's like, don't touch me. And you do the thing where you back away. Bottom line is, Niko, the first thing is you can't go into the referee's room. That is sacred ground when it comes to this sport, and it sets a horrendous precedent.
And that's why I started there. That's why I focused there, because, if we're going to build the case, I mean, maybe what was said or wasn't said is hearsay. And we can only, I don't know if there's video evidence, but
there is of him going into the room. That surveillance tape apparently at Red Bull Arena was key to this, where there's tape. I don't know if there's audio attached, but there's video of him apparently from the Red Bull's cameras at Red Bull Arena of him going into that room.
Yeah. And that's what I mean, right? So what I mean, a video inside that room about what was said, right? Because I have no doubt in my mind, being personally, in my opinion, that Matt used these words, that Matt was irate, that he probably said more than that and was possibly aggressive with his body language and all of these things. But at the end of the day, the evidence that really puts him in the bottom of it all is that he went into this place, just like you said. And that's you went somewhere where you weren't supposed to be at, that no soccer player is ever supposed to be at. And that's it. That's the case. You going into that room just puts you in a bad position. And if you're going to go in there and try to be aggressive and disrespectful to refereeing, then you should get this 3-game suspension, and you should sit down and figure out what to do. And you shouldn't be asking for a reduction. I guess that's part of the protocol, right? You're always going to appeal, but does that show that you're really remorse about what happened? Come on.
Jarrett for Niko, go.
I don't disagree, and I think that's part of my thing is to I know it's been debated about what was said or wasn't said in that room, and I don't think we'll ever get that full story. But to your point, you can't go in there. Part of the write-up involved whoever pulled him out of there saying, what are you doing going in there? You can't do that, and that's the thing I didn't want to get lost in all of this is we're not going to ever really know what he said or didn't say when he went in there, what he said, what he did or didn't do. But the fact that he went in there is against that precedent. And yeah, you're like you said, you're going to go with that suspension, which is, I think 3 games was USSF's minimum. And man, if all that's corroborated, if he did take that threatening motion, lucky it's not more. And it's got to be weird for the officials too. And this will be one for Bart next time we talk to him.
Monday at 10.
One of our officials is when refs go into that room, they can let their guard down. It's supposed to be a place after the game where
place.
you can decompress. You shouldn't have. They are going to feel like they should not have to be on their guard, and they're correct in that. You shouldn't have to be on your guard in the one place where no one can bother you after the game.
It is a sacred space, and Matt Miazga, more than half of his yellows are for being dumb. They're not physical fouls. It's for dissent and things like that. More than half of his cards are for outbursts or pointing fingers or just, and you sit there and you wonder if this will be that moment for him where watching his team play in a hell is real conference final without him there and not being able to be in the match beforehand where they needed him at the back line against Philadelphia and you had to manufacture something with Alvis Powell and 2 trips to the Dollar Tree, that does it sink in for him here? It's like they were without you. They won. They pieced it together. Yerson Mosqueda got it at 90+4. You got the win. You got past Philly at home. Now you've got hell is real for the next 3 times. It is not going to be a Matt Miazga anchored backline. You wonder if the light comes on now. That's the key for me in all of this.
And he should, right? And that's why I don't expect any reduction to this time. And I think that he should be hit with everything that they've already exposed, because this cannot happen ever again. So if something this serious, if you are causing your team, let's say they don't go through as I expect them not to, and that makes you a different person, then he's becoming a better individual. But unfortunately, if at this point of his career he continues to do this, is because, as it happens in sports sometimes, when you're very talented and you're very good at what you do, everything else gets put under the rug, and you're allowed to do and say, and you're entitled that it is to walk into a room where you're not supposed to and say, why do I gotta get out of here? All of those things become a culture. It becomes part of you because of the way that you are treated in a day-to-day basis because of your talent. So this should be a changing moment for him, and he should learn and be more mature, you'd hope, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we will see what happens.
And I guess, Niko, I wanted to ask you, I guess we can kind of shift off this. We hadn't talked to you since the game over the weekend, and while we were hoping to talk to you under better terms for your Seattle Sounders, I guess I wanted to ask, from your point of view, what was lacking in that game that ended y'all season? What was lacking in that one?
The same thing that's lacked all year long. Well, actually, the half part of the season, the last half of the season, and it's goals. It was very simple. Is what was missing the entire 3 prior games against Dallas. And sometimes it's difficult for a coach to make changes of maybe what has been giving you results. And sometimes results hide what maybe your most talented 11 would be, especially when you're playing a experienced, big-named, cohesive unit like LAFC. And I think that's what happened here, right? So throughout the first 3 games against Dallas, Brian Schmetzer never changed the 11. And he said he wanted to. He said, you know what, maybe the same game I should have put Nicolas Lodero in. He continued to give Leo Chu a chance to display his disequilibrium, his speed, his ability to give the team width and stretch out defenses throughout 3 games in Dallas, and it never worked. So the fact that Brian Schmetzer went and again gave Leo Chu a chance and did not start Nicolas Lodero was a problem for me. I thought that in this one, Jordan Morris was what he is, right? He's quick. He gets behind defenders. He gives you a lot of runs into the box. He does a lot of things right. But finishing isn't necessarily his forte. And I know that we can go down to statistics, and I've had a lot of comments on social media about stats that say that Jordan is a good finisher. And I'm not talking about stats. I'm talking about the mentality of a forward that is a goal scorer who's had a whole career of goal scoring. Those guys are wired differently. The way they handle pressure, the way they see one-on-ones, the way they see their opportunities, the toolbox that they have on their backs in order to finish. Do I finish with my left, with my right? Do I chip? Do I have some flair and maybe fake and go through? Those are the things that Jordan has never really shown us because it's not his forte. He's a speed guy. He's someone that is really good. I love Jordan Morris, and that's why I prefer him on the wings, where he could do other things than just score goals. Because in this one, Crepeau, in the first 5 minutes, he had 2 chances. One of them, was a mid-range shot from Atencio. The other one was obviously the one we're talking about now, which is that 1-on-1. Jordan Morris does everything right to get across Kalini, gets around Kalini, gets behind him. It's 1-on-1 against Crepeau. Crepeau does a great job getting big, closing the space. But if you really look at that play, and I've looked at it over and over again, I think that if Jordan just trusts himself a little bit more and either fakes the shot and continues to carry his trajectory to the left side, he probably leaves Crepeau behind, who had already kind of put his body out there. But there's been more than one occasion this season when here in Seattle, whether it's media or with fans, we've discussed, well, had Jordan taken that shot differently, had Jordan maybe gotten around the keeper, had Jordan maybe had a little bit more patience, he would have put to score that. And that's just because that's not necessarily his forte. So all in all, in conclusion, this team needed goals. This team needed a little bit of hurricane, that player that puts the fear of God in you, and you just didn't have that. It was Kalini and Murillo that ended up dominating the game and forcing Seattle to take nothing but shots from outside the 18 for most of the game. And that's something that they were comfortable doing. So all in all, I just think that LAFC managed the game better. Actually, Seattle limited Buanga very well. I thought Yemer Gomez-Andrade and Alex did a good job at just limited him. But it took one chance. It took one ball from Tillman to break it all apart. And that's because you have that game changer, that player that just needs the one opportunity to put it away. And Seattle did not have that on their side.
Now, I know that in the 15 minutes that we've got left, I do want to talk about best 11. And I want to talk about conference finals, but let me get into the off season for Seattle, because next couple of days, there are going to be some announcements made. Nashville's made theirs, just to give you an example as to folks and their announcements and rosters and all this kind of stuff. For contracts that end at the end of this season for Seattle, Rusnak, and it's the end of the calendar year, Rusnak, Ladero, Montero, João Paulo, Eber, Kellen Rowe, Javier Arriaga, Stefan Cleveland, Paul Rothrock, Josh Atencio, Jackson Reagan, Dylan Tevis, Jacob Castro, Andrew Thomas, Abdoulaye Sissoko. How different is this Seattle team going to be next year?
I think it's going to be very different. I don't see Eber coming back. Ladero, clearly, we've talked about it enough here. It's the end of an era. He will be no longer with the team. Even some of the guys that are coming back, like Javier Arriaga, whose option will get picked up, I think that that's one of the Sounders' biggest trading chips. And you cannot have a guy that's winning $700,000 a year on your bench as your depth guy. What Jackson Reagan and Yemer Gomez-Andrade have done this year has been amazing. They've been the platform for this team to be second in the Western Conference despite its ups and downs and lacks of goals. So he'll be a guy that, yes, they're going to pick up that contract, but they'll be moving him somewhere. Another guy is Freddie Montero, someone who he's done a lot, but he got no play time. No play time in the playoffs, got no play time late in the season. Despite him scoring a couple of goals this season in various competitions, it just seems like he wasn't really in the atmosphere for what Brian Spencer wanted to do. So I expect him to probably move on to some sort of role within the team. I'm not saying it's coaching, but whether it's as an ambassador or whatever it is that Freddie Montero wants to do, I think he'll probably remain close to the club at some vicinity, but I don't expect him to be back. So this is going to be a very different team, all in all.
Jarrett, go for
it. As we look at, how things change, I actually wanted to ask you about LAFC, because you see them more than we do. You see them up close out there in the West. Seattle and LAFC were kind of tied through the playoffs, even going back to like 2019. What's the biggest change with what Steve Cherundolo has done with that team versus the way Bob Bradley does it? It seems like they play with more fight.
Before that, I got a message here. I keep getting questions about Raul. Yes, Raul got a contract through 2024. Before I answer your question, I won't forget. But
You good?
I think his future is very uncertain. Uh, that's another player that at $3 million plus dollars, three and a half, he's in your bench, and you've continued to play Jordan Morris as your striker. So I want to say that there's probably been some gaps in that relationship between player and club, because it's tough for you to be put in that position. I think that the lack of confidence of Raul Ruidiaz is pretty obvious. So I've set out the situation or the potential that if Raul Ruidiaz is not in the cards to be a starter next year, there could be potential for a loan or move him somewhere within MLS. Now, Raul Ruidiaz is not going to go free anywhere. So all of those of you who maybe heard from unreliable sources that Raul was going to go back to Universitario on a free and play for half of his salary, that's not going to happen. And whoever said that needs to really check himself before he wrecks himself. But at the end of the day, I think that if there is a possibility that Raul won't remain in Seattle, he's going to be alone within MLS. Now, to your question, I think the answer of what's different with Cherundolo is that they're more practical. They have various ways of playing. They're not worried about just playing pretty soccer, right? With Bob, it was different. It was a very talented team. It was a team that was exciting to watch, but they seemed to want to play one specific way, and they had a really hard time getting to these greedy games. And in this one, they no longer have that because Cherundolo sometimes can be pragmatic. He was pragmatic in this one. You saw Ilya Sanchez so many times kind of come back and get in between the center backs whenever Palacios would go. And sometimes it was all of them, having a lot of numbers behind the ball and not allowing Seattle space behind. So I think just Cherundolo's way has been really, really good. And defensively, they're just more solid. Murillo has been great since he came into the league, but I think now with Chiellini's experience, I think he's gotten a lot better and has filled some holes in his game. I think that the fullbacks are a lot more selective of when they push, when they stay. So there's just a lot of discipline within this team that I think has been the big difference for LAFC. And then having a guy like Bouanga, I mean, we're talking about a guy that scored 36 goals and at one point tied Mbappé for calendar goals this year, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure that Mbappé scored this week with PSG, so he's over the top. But I'm not saying Bouanga is Mbappé. What I'm saying is that to put into context how dominant he's been in his region, that's how good Bouanga's been. He was a top scorer in every competition he was at this year, including MLS play. So that's really where things change for you. When you have a guy like that that's doing absolutely everything, you can be disciplined, you can be pragmatic, and then you have a guy that's going to change the game in the blink of an eye.
All right. So, like I said, we can still go two directions here. I want to go MLS Best 11 since you mentioned Bouanga before we get into weekend previews. I think that the Best 11 that came out is more of an example that we need to have a best roster. We need to have like a best game day 18 or a best 20 because there was a point that I made when the best 11 came out that your back line is Miazga, Tim Parker, and Walker Zimmerman. And I know why you're shaking your head because for me, I would have had Yeimar Gomez-Andrade as a part of that back line instead of one of those individuals, probably Tim Parker or something like that, considering Parker was probably a beneficiary of his system. But, you could go any number of ways. But I think that this is an example, once again, that the best 11 needs to be a best game day 18 because of the omissions that were on this year's list.
I mean, it's outrageous. And it gives you really – it makes you look like there's no consistency. I mean, it's incoherent for you to say, these are the finalists for Defender of the Year. Here are your three. Oh, but for the ideal 11, we're going to just grab two of those guys. And then the guy with the best stats out of those three, we're going to kick him out and we're going to put Walker Zimmerman. I mean, it makes no sense to anyone. And honestly, it's a little bit what's the word I'm looking for here? It's not even sad. It's disappointing, and it's embarrassing.
I thought you were going to say disrespectful, but go ahead.
Disrespectful, and embarrassing because you lose all kinds of seriousness of what this ideal 11, this award, this honor to be put into this roster is. Because look, love Walker. He's a great guy. He's a great defender, but this wasn't his year. This just wasn't his year. So maybe you put somebody else. Maybe you put Johnson in that one, and I'll be like, okay, well, that makes sense. He was fantastic with Orlando. Was fantastic in the playoffs. I have no problem. Maybe put Robinson in there, and I'll be like, all right, well, he's the Ed guy. He did great things with Atlanta. But Walker Zimmerman was not it for Nashville this year. He just wasn't. So whenever you put him in there like that, it just makes you look unserious.
All right, Jarrett, go for it.
No, I don't disagree with it. Mostly because you can't, because we see this in other sports where you tie incentives to awards, and it's so hard to take it seriously when you tie incentives to awards when awards just get out of whack like this. Like, we're looking at, it's the best 11. Like, well, yeah, that's like, you picked 3 defenders, you picked a bunch of attacking midfielders, and you picked some strikers. You didn't pick, the best holding midfielder. You didn't pick, the best fullbacks. There were a number of amazing fullbacks this year. It's just, it's so scattershot all over the place that it doesn't really make sense, and it is frustrating.
Jeremiah O'Shan here called it a popularity contest. That's what it is at the end of the day.
I mean, God love Walker Zimmerman, but it is a popularity contest. It's kind of like, I don't mean this nearly as mean as it's going to sound to Walker. It's kind of like when they kept giving Derek Jeter gold gloves when he was in his 30s and he couldn't move at shortstop anymore.
I like that.
Weekend previews. I'm gonna hold you to this one. So since this is the last time that we get to talk before we know who the last 2 are, when you look at the 2 games this weekend, you've got Benny Ball continuing its role. We had Glenn Davis on earlier this week to talk about Houston Dynamo going up against LAFC. And then you've got Hell is Real, the conference final on the other side. When you look at these 2 games, what do you see?
Well, I see the 2 best teams in the league coming at each other in the East, right? To me, that's the way it is. No disrespect to LAFC, but I think that this has the biggest amount of talent on the field. I mean, you have game changers on both sides of the fields. Barreal, Lucho Acosta on one side. You got Rossi and Cucho on the other. It's going to be fantastic to watch a team that wants to take the ball, that wants to play offensively, and wants to go and attack you. The best attacking team in the league against FC Cincinnati team that's going to press you, that's going to want to take it away, that's going to hit you on counters. So it's going to be a fantastic game. Now, there are things that are going to be diminished, at least in terms of Cincinnati, because now that Miazga's out, look, I got all the respect for Mosquera. I thought he played a fantastic game, a lot better than I thought he would against Philadelphia. He was very mature for his age in this one. And Powell was a good Band-Aid on that side, right? He's not the guy, he's not a center back, but he played well. Ray Gaddis as well did well. Murphy, despite his limitations, I thought he got the job done. But you're not going to have Carranza coming at you at 70%. You're not going to have Gazdag, who's not necessarily the most creative guy in the world. You're going to have Matan, Cucho, and Rossi coming at you. And then Farsi blasting on one side, and Morris picking his moments to get it close, and Nagby trying to break you down with through ball. So I just think Cincinnati is going to have to figure out a lot of things here. We don't know Nwodo is going to be back in this one, and in what percentage she'll be back. He's been so key, so important for this team. Kubo, I praise him for the job he did as well against Philadelphia. But again, this is a Philadelphia team that was very slow in transition compared to other times. And Brujo Martinez wasn't full on there. And Alejandro Bedoya I didn't think pushed enough and challenged that midfield enough. So it's just going to be a real chess match, but I don't expect it to be as boring as that Philadelphia-Cincinnati game was. Going to be a good one. I'm going to go with Columbus. They have a full squad. They have the talent. They have the game changers as well. They can match that with Cincinnati. So despite the home team being as good as they have, I'm going to go with Columbus.
Okay, so we have your predictions. Jared, are you with us tomorrow?
Yeah. Should be.
All right, because so then you get an extra day to think, and so that's my,
Thanks.
yeah. You get an
That's
extra.
not going to help.
No, I know, but you get an extra day to think about yours. All right, Niko, go ahead and hit the promo. Let everybody else know what's going on with Soccer Bar and Pulso Sports. And
oh, dang, yeah, we're pressed for time, man. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, hey, let me just give you. Let me give you the LAFC Houston one, man. I got Houston winning. I got the upset.
Yes.
That's what I kind of put out initially. I know that it's difficult. I know that this team doesn't have the game changers that I just talked about, so I don't want to contradict my own theory here. But I like Benny Ball. I love that midfield. I think Ache, although not maybe a game changer on the attacking end, he does have the quality. He does have the leadership to really put this team through to the next phase. I think that they win the midfield battle against LAFC, and I think that they win it on a really, really tough game. So I'm going to go with Dynamo Columbus as the big final. What's the promo for Soccer Bar Pulso Sports at Soccer Bar in about an hour or so, or 45 minutes? We're going to get in here. We're going to have a couple of interesting interviews. We're going to break down the finals. We're going to talk about what's ahead for not just the Seattle Sounders and some teams are in the Western Conference, but all around. We're going to go look at some contracts, what teams could look like next year. So it's going to be a good one. Pulso Sports, wait for that end of the season conference from Seattle. It happens every year. Stay tuned to that. We do have a scheduled Nicolas Odero interview that we should be doing post-season, post-everything, post-contract. It's going to be very candid. So check that out. It's probably going to be next week, late next week. So I'm excited. I'm excited for what's coming up in Pulso, excited what's going on in Soccer Bar. Oh, also check out Sounders Weekly on iHeart. We just did a end of the season wrap up with Jackson Phelps and Ari Aliwol. And it's going to be a good one as well. That was fun. We did that last night. So go ahead and check that out on iHeartRadio.
what he said. So with Niko Moreno, Pulso Sports, and the Soccer Bar, with Jarrett, who got to hang out in hour number 2 for a change. Let's see, since Jarrett is the one who got to hang out in hour number 2, and the three of us are here, I'm going to have Jarrett send us home this time. Because
yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah, so you get to send us home for this one.
Okay, fine. All right, stay safe, everybody. Mucho platico.
What he said. We'll be back at it again 9:05 tomorrow morning. Another stacked show here on SDH. And since it's the end of the show, I have to find the out. I finally did, so we get to do this.